I'm going to try my best to keep this clip a little shorter. I'm going to try to use this time to cover some of the alternative dinos that I mentioned in my previous video. How there are what I will call second to some as far as resource gathering. We all know who the #1 resource gatherers are, and if you don't, here's a crash course. So for metal and flint, it's the Ankylosaurus. For stone, it is Doedicurus. For wood, people argue it's the mammoth. People argue it's the beaver. For thatch, people say the Megalosaurus, the deer one, not the cave, not the Megalosaurus, the Megalosaurus. And they also say it's the Bronto and the mammoth. Those ones are for thatch. For fiber, people say the bear, people say moss chops, Therizino. I mean, you get mixed responses when you ask people what the best gatherer is, but across the board, if you're looking hit for hit, I guess to refine my list a little bit, it would be wood, mammoth, thatch, Bronto, fiber, Therizino. Anky stays the same for stone, or sorry, for flint and metal, and Doedicurus stays the same for stone. What else do we have? So covered fiber, covered thatch, covered wood, covered metal, covered stone, and berries. Let's say the Bronto probably takes the cake for that too. And those are just the high notes. You know, there are additional resources that each one of those can gather. For instance, a lot of speculation exists on whether the Anky or the Doedicurus is better at getting crystal slash obsidian. And to lay the debate to rest once and for all, the fact of the matter is that this has probably changed over the course of Ark's lifespan. So I'm assuming day 1 Ark back in 2015, whenever it came out, very first time, the one or the other was probably more effective at gathering crystal or obsidian. Because people swear up and down that the Anky gathers more obsidian than the Doedicurus. But I have tested this myself personally within the last year, and the Doedicurus gets more obsidian than the Anky, but the Anky gets more crystal than the Doedicurus. So take that for what you will, but those are my findings, and here's my list of alternatives, baby. So real quick, just catching you up to speed on what's going on in my video here as I record this real time. I am breeding a mating pair of raptors. I already have a mating pair of dilos, although I'm not going to breed them. I have my iguanodon, which is the Lord of Land dino. I have my dodo, which is my food source, gives me eggs to eat, although I might have to adjust that setting because I think I adjusted it in the wrong direction. I have a breeding pair of PTs, so my first course of action will probably be to get an egg cooking for my PTs and my raptors. And what else do I have? The iguanodon and the moss chops. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Not too far into the game. I think I'm on like day 3 or day 4, and these are just my initial steps. Anytime I start fresh on a map, whether I know it or not, it doesn't really affect the way, the order in which I tame dinos. It more so impacts where I will first start to explore and mainly on maps that I played before starting fresh, I am a little more comfortable going inland from the get-go, and the reverse effect for starting a map that I haven't played before, I'll stick to the beach until I get to level 30 or able to unlock the PT saddle. So, now to the alternative resource gathering list of dinos. Now to start out, let's go with wood. Now I did cover this in my the last video that I put out for Ark. Just kind of talking and passing about it, but this time I'll go into more depth. And that is the bear for wood gathering. And this one is my favorite personally, for the fact that the bear can transport wood faster than any of the others listed, including the Therizino and the mammoth. Now again, this is without additional aid, so I know that the bug, the flying cockroach thing, can carry the mammoth, so it essentially makes the mammoth arguably #1, unmatched as far as that resource gathering goes for the weight reduction and the amount of wood that it gets, yada yada yada. But we're not there. We're not here to discuss that. We know the most effective means to gather wood. This is the alternative route, okay? So with the bear, what I like to do is I like to ride it and hit trees with my axe, because obviously the axe is better at gathering wood than the pickaxe, and the bear has high carrying capacity. So the weight stat on the bear by default is it's quite high, but chances are if you tame a mid to high level bear, it will get a decent amount of stat points in the weight stat. So I argue roughly 1,000 pounds you can come to expect from any randomly tamed wild bear. So like I said, what I do is I just hack away at trees while I'm riding on the bear's back. It can get close enough to trees, believe it or not, while you're still riding on its back. You don't need to dismount every time as you would need to with a iguanodon, let's say. And additionally, with the bear and gathering wood, another trick is robbing beaver dams. Now when you live in an area that's riddled with beaver dams, this is the most effective way to gather wood. I won't say hands down in comparison to everything else, but especially with the bear, it's the most effective means of gathering wood, because you just go from beaver dam to beaver dam and fill your bear's weight up just before it's about to get the over encumbered icon, and then you just run your sorry ass back to your base and unload your woodly gold, the brown gold we'll call it. And yeah, so that's for wood. Alternative is the bear. If you have any more questions about that, leave it in the comments, and I will fill you in on all of the neat little ins and outs that comes with the bear and gathering wood. For thatch, now again, I'm taking into account variables that affect not just hit for hit how much a dino gets. And the one that I look at above all else is the trike. It used to be the Gigantopithecus, but unless you have kibble for taming Gigantopithecus, it's just too difficult of a tame to justify its gathering abilities. Now granted, Gigantopithecus can still gather fiber, and it can harvest meat, it can harvest hide, it can harvest thatch, and a little bit of wood, and a decent amount of berries. So it's all around, it's a really good harvester. However, like I said, it's just too difficult of a tame, and that's what really knocks it out of the running as an alternative. And now people will argue that the trike is a master thatch gatherer, in terms of like being in the same league as a Bronto, but I don't think it gets enough recognition because I've met a lot of veterans that just don't know, like they use I've met veterans that have both used trikes and haven't used trikes, and the ones that did use trikes, there were a handful of them that didn't even realize the trikes could gather thatch because they thought that the gathering button was correlated to the attack button, which is the one that gives you insane amounts of berries. But when you use the trike's gathering attack, which is the charge attack, and on PS4 it's the L2 button, you don't harvest any berries. Now, I mentioned it in my last video, just interrupting the list here real quick, that I'd like to find a spot, especially since I've tamed so many dinos starting out here in such a short amount of time, and honestly not having to travel very far from where I spawned in on the map. This looks like a safe enough spot where I can set up shop, at least for my dino's sake, and then I can go scouting a little bit to find where I might want to set up my starter base. Because yeah, it's getting a little too crowded on Noah's Ark here. Not built for that much food. But yeah, getting back to it with the trike now. It's unmatched because when you do the charging attack, it gathers nothing but thatch and a little bit of wood. And if you find some densely crowded area that's just packed full of trees, you can max out the trike's carrying weight in thatch alone. And not to mention, they kind of operate the same as a bear in that when they don't have that encumbered icon, they can still move at a decent rate, or at a decent pace. However, they still do get bogged down a little more than the bear does. But since you're out there just harvesting thatch, and it doesn't weigh that much, you can come away with quite a bit. And so yeah, that's my choice for thatch. And lots of people would say the Megaloceros, but for multiple reasons, my big one though is that it just it takes too long to gather thatch. Not saying it's not a good thatch gatherer by any means, it's just the fact that you have to be out there for quite a long time. So I'm not taking away from anybody's favorite dinos or anything like that, or favorite utility dinos, or the ones they just lean towards over others, whatever the case, but yeah, we're just talking effectiveness here. The best of both worlds. Now, moving down the list, let's go fiber. Now, this one is a little tricky because Therizino is really unmatched in this resource. Because they've got their little prickly fingers digging around in the sand there, picking up all that fiber. And I don't know, I might have to think on this one a little bit, because I would say Gigantopithecus. However, I guess when you compare it to how long it takes a Therizino to tame, though, the Gigantopithecus is a lot easier. Because you can tame a Gigantopithecus with like 2 to 3 kibble, depending on its level. And since I have my rates boosted to 6 times taming, which is the theme that I'm following here, so 2 times taming, but then to the effect of quality of life, I triple that 3 times, so 2 times 3 is 6, so that's how I land on 6 times. And but I would say, yeah, honestly I would have to go with the Gigantopithecus, because for 2 reasons. First of all, they are fast when compared to the moss chops, and furthermore, the moss chops can tend to be picky eaters. So as long as you know where Gigantopithecus spawn, I think it would be easier, even if you wanted to take the extra time and tame it with mejoberries. I mean, God help you if you choose to do that, just to how finicky it is. And you know, if you're like me, you don't use traps, but yeah, it just is what it is. But if you wanted to do that with mejoberries, I still think you would have more luck taming a Gigantopithecus before you could find a Mosschaps that wasn't a picky eater. But that's just me spitballing that idea right here and now. And that's why I would choose the Gigantopithecus over the Mosschaps. And a little added bonus with the Gigantopithecus is you can have it passively gather fiber. So what you do is you just enclose it in a small area around your base where there are plenty of bushes, or even maybe right outside your base. Just give it a little like taming pen sort of thing, or not a taming pen, but like a chicken coop, and let it and put it on wander, and it will just pick up fiber over the course of time. So, but when you're riding them, they can gather fiber pretty easily, pretty quickly, although you do need to dedicate quite a few stat points to weight, since they just inherently have lower stats in weight, although you can get lucky with higher levels. But so that would be my choice for fiber. What's next on the list? So we got wood, we got thatch, we got fiber. I don't want to reveal the ace up my sleeve just yet. So let's go with berries. I think this one, if you know me, if you've watched some of my videos, you'll know what my answer is going to be for this one, and that is iguanodon. This works in two ways. First is the fact that the iguanodon is halfway decent at the amount of berries that it can gather. But second is the fact that it can seed its inventory. So you can turn whatever berries you gather into seed. Now this is really only helpful for starting out from scratch, you know, level 1, and not really having anything, no base, no tribe, none of that stuff. But the fact that you can take this dino on the go, and this is my taming dino of all things, so maybe I'm a little biased here, and there might be a better runner-up for alternative, but just the fact that it's got high weight carrying, plus unlimited sprint, plus decent movement speed by default, and the fact that it can harvest berries as well as it can with as low of a level as it is. But that's what I would choose for berries. Plain and simple. Don't mind me, you know, I'm just smacking some dinos around, using my friendly fire disabled to my advantage, because you can't pick up dialos and you can't ride them, so I'm not going to play that whole game where we do ring around the rosy and try to get them into the perfect position. I just line them up where I want them and then punch them into the position I want them. Okay, here is the ace up my sleeve. Actually, before I get into that, okay, what I would like to say is, if I had to choose between a Doedicurus or an Anky, I would choose the Anky. And some of you might think I'm crazy because of the amount of stone that's required to build certain things. But here's the thing. When you go out with an Anky, you get roughly the same amount of stone as you do flint, or comparable amounts. Like, you get more flint than you do stone, but not by a long shot. It's pretty close. And when you add an Argy into that mix, it kind of becomes obsolete to compare the fact that the Doedicurus gets so much stone for one hit, and the weight reduction, and so on and so forth. But I'm only saying this because as an alternative to stone, a stone gatherer, which Doedicurus is the one and only, as far as vanilla dinos go. The Dicarus is the one and only. The Anki would be the only other one I would suggest. Now for the ace up my sleeve. For all other resources, including, and fiber falls into this mix as well. So fiber, flint, crystal, obsidian, whatever. Saber-toothed tiger is #1 alternative, and I'll tell you why. It can honestly gather just as much, if not more, flint than taking an Anki out. And if you're just on foot, Anki versus Saber-tooth, the comparison it's just not even in the same ballpark. Like, it's 10 to 1 easily on the amount of flint that you could get to and from and to your base, and then back again, that you can with a Saber-tooth as you could with an Anki without an Argy. Now, obviously, when you add an Argy into the mix, things change a little bit. However, Saber-tooth still has more movement speed than an Argy. And since the pickaxe is #1 on, according to Dododex, for flint gathering, you technically get more flint per node with a pickaxe than you do an Anki. So yeah, fun fact there. Not sure if anybody knew that, but Saber-tooth. And the reason that it works is because it rides so low to the ground that you don't have to dismount it. You stand on top of the rock that you want to hit, take out your pickaxe, and go to town. And that's my list. I hope you liked it, and I hope it made this video entertaining to watch. Thank you.